And as part of the pregame ceremonies, they're introducing a number of celebrities on the ice. And Alan Eagleson has just been introduced to the crowd. The first person introduced was NHL President John Ziegler. Tommy Ivan, a longtime executive of the Blackhawks. The present general manager, Bob Pulford. And Bob gets a rather negative response from the Chicago fans. Phil Esposito of the New York Rangers, their general manager, and of course, Tony's big brother, is introduced to the crowd. And then the executives of the Blackhawks, Michael Wirtz, and the president, Bill Wirtz. Gary Monahan, this will be an interesting ceremony, I'm sure, and the fans here will really respond as they already have.
That's exactly right. I'm surprised, I suppose, at the amount of boos for Bob Pulford, but then again, the team hasn't performed all that well. But a rounding ovation for the rest of the dignitaries here.
Well, especially Phil Esposito. I guess they admired his goal-scoring abilities, even when he scored a lot of them for other teams. But he was a Blackhawk at one time before a famous trade that sent him on to the Boston Bruins. And now the salute Mr. Goalie. And for those who might not know, perhaps younger fans, Mr. Goalie is the nickname they hung on Glenn Hall, and he really was a remarkable National Hockey League goaltender. And he set a record that we mentioned many times before, but we'll mention again. Glenn Hall played in 502 consecutive games in goal for the Detroit Red Wings and the Chicago Blackhawks. He finally had to come out in that 503rd game after playing a period because of a bad back. But I don't think ever again in the history of hockey will we see a goaltender play 502 consecutive games.
No, I don't think so either. Of course, in those days, most teams just carried the one goaltender, and so the goaltender felt that he had to play every game. But interestingly, Glenn Hall hurt his back the day before that 503rd game while tying up his skates. He just felt his back give out on him, and he hoped that he could play that 503rd game, but started the game and had to take himself out.
They're still talking about Glenn Hall here, and we'll give you a bit of the statistics on this great goaltender, who now, by the way, works for the Calgary Flames as an advisory coach in their goaltending in the Calgary organization. Glenn Hall played 906 games. He won 407. His career goals against average was 2.51. He had 84 shutouts. 3 times won the Vezina Trophy. Went into the Hall of Fame in 1975, and the applause right now is for Glenn Hall.
Glenn Hall, too, he used to really get involved in the games. Every day before the game, he would usually throw up, being sick to his stomach. So you could tell that he really got involved in each and every game and obviously got nervous.
There's a better story about Glenn Hall, about every training camp. He hated training camp, so especially late in his career, he lived on a farm near Edmonton, and he missed a lot of training camps because he said he had to paint the barn. And they said he either had the thickest paint on a barn in Alberta, or he had some other thing going on at the farm because he often missed the start of training camp while painting the barn.
I guess he realized he had to play those 70 games and felt he didn't need training camp as much as some of the other players. Of course, goaltenders really don't have to be in the same kind of condition that the forwards or the defensemen have to be. So Glenn Hall would miss most of training camp and then show up and start the season and play extremely well.
Now the fans are applauding Tony Esposito. 888 games with a National Hockey League career that was mostly with the Hawks, briefly with Montreal before that. He won 423 games. His career goals against average was .292. And that is remarkable in that Glenn Hall played, I think, in a more conservative era, and Tony maybe in a more high-scoring era. He had 76 shutouts in his career, 3-time winner of the Vezina Trophy. And I think the response for Tony O is even greater here than it was for Glenn Hall, with a younger crowd in the stands.
Well, that's right. I'm sure that most of the fans here remember Tony Esposito more vividly than they remember Glenn Hall. Tony Esposito was a real workhorse as well. The schedule had increased to 80 games by the time Tony Esposito was playing, but he still managed to play, well, 60 games 9 times and 70 games 2 times.
Well, they're saluting the goaltenders now at center ice.
Glenn Hall with jersey number 1, and Tony Esposito with jersey number 35.
Here in Chicago Stadium, they've now turned out the lights and have put a spotlight right at center ice as Tony Esposito puts on his number 35. Glenn Hall puts on his number 1, as these sweater numbers will never be worn again by Chicago Blackhawk players.
That's quite a touching scene with the lights out except for the spotlight on. Tony Esposito and Glenn Hall, of course, their actual, not the sweaters, but the mementos of the two goaltenders are already high up in the rafters.
And they just turned spotlights on those banners hanging in the rafters. 35 saluting Tony Esposito, who played briefly for the Vancouver Canucks of the Western Hockey League before going to Montreal, then on to his great years in Chicago from 69 to 84. Glenn Hall from 57 to 67 with the Blackhawks. Earlier than that with Detroit. Two really great goaltenders being saluted in Chicago tonight. And the Wirtz family represented by Michael and William Wirtz as they were part of the ceremony here at center ice. Bill Wirtz is now going to say a few words.
Games played, games won, career goals against average, Vezina trophies, Hall of Famers. Ladies and gentlemen, two of the greatest goaltenders in the history of the National Hockey League we're honoring tonight. On behalf of Governor James R. Thompson and Mayor Eugene Sawyer, today has been proclaimed as the Glenn Hall Tony Esposito Day this November 20th. And what a day it is for all Blackhawk fans.
Mr. William Wirtz of the Blackhawks addressing the crowd.
One of the highest honors we have for a hockey club is to retire a player's number. And with a presentation to Glenn and Tony, these numbers will never be worn again, and I officially proclaim these numbers retired.
Now let's have a few words from Mr. Goldie Glenn Hall.
Harvey Wittenberg, the public address announcer, hands the mic to Glenn Hall as Mr. Goalie has a few words to say. And he's a man of few words.
It would be ridiculous to try and thank all the people that I should thank. I just feel so good that my family is here, the kids and my son-in-law and daughter-in-law. And I thank the Wirtz family and the Norris family for the things that they have done for me. I do believe that, yeah, well, I'm good at that. I'm sorry, Harvey. I'm uncomfortable here. I know the players are anxious to get playing hockey. This is indeed the highest award and the greatest thing that can happen to an athlete, and I thank you people here for putting up with me, and Tony will do the rest of the talking.
Mr. Goalie, as they call him. Now, here's
Tony Esposito.
Crowd chanting Tony, Tony. He used to be a man of few words, but he's become a little more talkative in his recent years, now as a general manager in the NHL of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
This is wonderful to see. You want the great people of Chicago come out and be so responsive to us. Thank you for loving me. I like it. The way I could compare it is to be in the Hall of Fame was something great. But there are hundreds of people, hundreds of players that are in the Hall of Fame. But to have your sweater retired in this fashion, and there's only a handful, is the ultimate dream that I could ever have wanted, and with the wonderful people of Chicago. Thank you very much. I love you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll all stand give a standing ovation to these two all-time great goaltenders. Glenn Hall.
Standing ovation for Tony Esposito and Glenn Hall.
Now, to all remain standing.
A great tribute to two great goaltenders.